At this stage, the form of the basket is totally developed. There's not much that will change, but there are a couple of considerations. I'm not going to come all the way, even if I wanted to, I wouldn't come all the way up to the top of those weavers, because in the end, half of those get bent over and woven down inside to finish off the top edge of the basket. So I'll come up about where my fingers are, another 2-3 inches. But as I get near there, I want to look at where these uprights are laying. Sometimes they can sort of creep together, and you want the spaces between them to be sufficient for weaving the lashing in. Like these two are too close together there. So from time to time, I'll tug those a little bit like that. Just there's enough room you can move them around. Here on the end, it's getting a little, getting a little close at this corner. So I'll bring them away from that corner. And it might be you shift 2 or 3 uprights over. So this one and that one are all going to go to my left like that. So I can pull that one over a little bit. And I have more room here. So do some of the same, do it again. And you'd be surprised how much you can move them. Another way to deal with some of that is as you get closer to the end, you can cut a taper in them. Like that. Like that if you need to. If they get a little too close to each other, this one's getting close to its neighbor. And a lot of this is going to get cut off or bent over. You just don't want it to be too abrupt. And those can be pulled apart as well. So that's more stuff for you to think about as you're winding around your last 6 or 8 or 10 rows of weavers. More stuff to look at as you're going. And now I'm applying no pressure whatsoever on either the weaver or the upright. All that I'm doing is making sure that I give it a little tug that way, which is almost imperceptible. And here, it's flopping around. It got sort of a split in that upright, and the weaver is behind there, or between it. And I want to just lay it on top of that so as to not continue to split that upright. So there's those two, and I'll just give them a tug apart, open a little space between them. Yeah, and this end is a little bit crowded. See over here, those 3 are near each other. There's more room here, so I'll just pull these all over like that. Try to balance that out a bit. There's only so much you can do, but you can make things better for yourself later. If those get too close together, it makes some of the last steps of fitting the rims really difficult. Also, at this stage of the game, don't worry too much if the overlap ends up at a corner, because it's not affecting the strength in any way anymore. So I'll just keep on winding, and then I have to evaluate it based on the shortest uprights, not these longer ones. So these are really only going to come up another inch plus. And then I'll let the basket dry.
When the basket has thoroughly dried, all the weavers have shrunk in their width. So that creates a sort of looseness in the whole body of it. And you shove each row of weavers down towards the bottom to take up all this slack. And it's a sort of slow process where you, one by one, are shoving each row down. You have to then turn the basket. I try to work just a couple of rows at a time, going all the way around it, rather than to push all this one side down and then try to catch that up. So try to bring them down evenly. And you want to make each successive row nice and tight against its neighbor, and work around the entire basket. It will reduce the height of the basket overall. Not a lot, depends on the size of things, but it'll make it a lot tighter and a lot neater.
So you can see how much space you end up opening up. These are wider weavers than some of the baskets I did. And the shrinkage is always proportional to the size of the stock, but it feels like these wide ones shrink a lot more. It's usually not difficult to move them down. Sometimes if the balance between the thickness of the uprights and the weavers is out of whack. If the weavers are too thick, then it can get a little tough, in which case I sometimes take a small block of wood and just hammer on it right there to knock them down. But you have to be careful doing that because you can damage the weavers. And around you go. That's the nature of basket making. There's that overlap, so those shifted a bit to go on the inside to help push that down. Almost there. what do I got? So that's where I just stop the weaver. And what I do at this point, it's hard to see from this angle, but I'll start to look at where I need to put one more weaver or part of a weaver in there to sort of even off that spiral. Remember, this was a continuous wrapping. So that upper edge of this weaver is not necessarily parallel to a plane down here. And we'll look at all that in detail. That's preparation for putting in the woven rim that then the inner and outer rims bind to. So that'll be the next step on this basket. After packing down those weavers, I am getting the basket ready to finish off the weaving and add the rim strip that the inner and outer rims get lashed to. And the first thing is to add one last weaver, or part of one last weaver, to even off the top height of the basket. Remember that spiral effect, so I want the top edge of that top weaver to be parallel to a plane that is the bottom of the basket. And you can do it by measurement, but of course I don't. I just eyeball it. And what I looked at, I sight across the long side of this basket and then across the ends. And as I look at this end, this looks low. It looks like if I bring that weaver around to about here and taper it, it'll even off the disparity. So that's what I'll do. I've got it partly woven in, swung around, and I'm just sighting across there, and I'm gonna have it sort of disappear about there, and I'll taper its bottom edge. And again, it's all just eyeballed. It's pretty forgiving stuff. And then just weave that in as you ordinarily would. I have soaked the top of the basket, just those overhanging bits, and this weaver. And so I just lash it in like that. With one last check, you can wrench it a little bit. And I think that'll do. And I'll even snip that there. So now I need to get one long weaver that'll make a whole circuit around the basket and overlap a little bit. And weave that in and trim these. And that strip will be the one the rims get lashed to. It'll also be where these fold over and weave into the body to sort of finish off the top of the basket. So let me grab that weaver and I'll show you how to trim the tops of these and close them in. I'm interrupting this video from the future. It is presently July, and the bulk of this basket making video stuff was shot in May, and Daniel and I were working on the ones for finishing off the weaving, and found I was missing a video showing how to install the rim strip. So that's what I'll do here. The rim strip is another splint about the thickness of an upright. This one is maybe 1/2 inch wide, and I'll show you how to wind it in, weave it around, and into all these uprights. The preparation for it is what we've been looking at. The basket had dried. I had knocked all the weavers down toward the bottom, tapered the last one at the top right here so that it runs out right above where the first one began down below. So I'm pretty satisfied with the top edge of that basket, so then this rim strip will lay right above there. So I'll show you how to weave that in, and then we'll segue back to the springtime and carry on with the rest of it. So this is just the missing rim strip stuff. A lot of action going on in the neighborhood today as well. So pretty much wherever you start is fine, and it just alternates from that last weaver. I've soaked the rim strip and I've dampened the uprights. I don't want to get the basket too wet at this stage. And if your rim strip is too heavy, too thick, it will deform these uprights. So you do want to pay some attention to the preparation of that material. And you just alternate it just as you do any of the weavers. There'll come a point where I will skip the pattern a little bit, and I'll show you that. And it overlaps on itself in the end. And oh, that's where that weaver runs out. So here's a good place where the pattern has to skip. Otherwise I'd end up just following that previous weaver. But because this weaver runs out here, I sort of lose the pattern for a bit. And I can do that right back here. Right at the tail end of that last tapered weaver. And I talk about the thickness of this upright, and mine's a little bit heavy. You can see it pushing those uprights. My rim strip, I mean, is a little bit heavy, and it's pushing those uprights down a bit. And just keep folding it around, pushing it down towards that last weaver. There can be a little space between it and the last weaver. So I've got more overlap than I need by far. Like that. And let's see here. What have I got? This basket's woven in a different pattern than what I have showed you so far. So a slight variation. And remember, I talked about that last weaver, and you're working to get the top edge of the basket parallel to a plane at the bottom. You can fudge this rim strip a little bit this way and that to achieve that as well. So I'm sighting here across the rim strip each way to see that I like where it sits. And now we'll jump back to the past in May, and you'll see how I fold these over to weave them in. I want to wet these to do that. And I think I have enough of that video from the previous session, so I'll just step back to what I was doing in July, and this will pick up with what I was doing in May. Sometimes what I'll do is try to work opposite ends of the basket. I've worked the middle of that end, I'll do the middle of this end, and then the middle of the two long sides. And that just sort of secures things so that the rim strip doesn't get all out of whack. These tails are a little bit long probably. So this is where I usually do it, is in my lap like that. And then just as before, I can push the basket from underneath. And that one went nicely. I'll trim that. So I'm just doing, as I said, from the outside right now, so every other one. I bend them, I taper them, and then I try to tuck them in. That butter knife will open that up. And if you can weave it all the way down, that's easier than trimming it. You couldn't see any of that. I tend to work all four sides of the basket. I did the two ends, and now I'll do these long sides. So I'm just taking that center one, and I put my finger on the outside of it when I bend it over. This is pretty long tail. And then just work in my lap like that, and just as before, I'm pushing. Basket's just a little too big to grab. I was pushing the weavers sort of from the outside. Put that one, there we go. So I got that one under several strips, and as I said, it's long, so I'll catch it there. And now I can pull it right like that. Bring that down a little bit. And that one is extra long inside, so I'll trim it off with scissors as close as I can get to that weaver. And from there I'll go to the opposite side and do, say, this one. So you bend it. I haven't yet tapered it. I'm going to already trim it a little long. So let's see how this one will go. Just curl it like that under those weavers. That's a double one. There we go. Perfect. That one went under all the weavers, so I didn't have to trim it. It's just what I need. There, you can maybe see that shred. I'll just cut that. And sometimes you peel them just like you're dividing the splint, because it was frayed there. But rather than get it cracked, I'll go ahead and trim it like that. Nearly impossible to do this without getting my hands in the way of the camera. And now, of course, everything is happening in here, and you can't see a thing. That one tore along its side, so I'll just trim it right there. And on this particular basket, I'm only going to weave down the outside one. Sometimes I would take this one, bend it this way, and weave it out here too. But in this case, I'm just going to cut them off from the inside, right at the height of the rim strip. Find both techniques done on old baskets, where that turn down happens inside and out. Others, those inside ones get cut off. No particular thought about it either way, really. Probably get a little more strength if it's turned both ways, but seen so many old baskets that are done just one way and they last just fine. So I'll wrestle with this all the way around and do that to all these other baskets and then make some rims and handles. I have another basket here that I'm turning the uprights down, and I'll do them to the outside on this one. I've already done all the inside ones, but you'll be able to see very clearly what happens. So there's the upright, and it's not been scraped on the inside, so it's a little textured, but you're not going to see much of it. Sometimes you can peel it away. And I'll taper it. And then just sort of wind it under that weaver. This one will slide right in place almost. And I'll catch it right there. Pick it up. Pull it down and trim it like that. Oops. You can see that it sort of divided the splint right there. And I dropped my scissors. So just overbend it, wind it under that weaver, and as many as you can. 3 ought to do it, and I'll catch it there and bring it over that next one. I'll try to catch it. It's not bending up. There it goes. And then just pull it snug right there. And I cut it like that. That'll certainly make a stronger basket if they're woven in and out. And it'd be neater if that splint had been polished, had been scraped or split. So that texture will show a little bit there. But it's not fatal. Just another way to do it.